Thank you very much. First, Mr. President, I thank you for this award and for letting me be a small part of your remarkable birthday celebration. When I was looking at that film, I could barely recognize the young man I used to be. And I was thinking that such things should be reserved for showing after a person has already passed from the scene. But I am particularly grateful to receive this award because of those who have received it in the past, because it comes from Shimon Peres, who is my personal friend and a global treasure. But I would like to say what I think the meaning of all this is. The search for peace and reconciliation and a shared future does not fit easily within the flow of life as normally we think of it. We always like to think of political efforts, social efforts, almost as if they were sporting events. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. At the end, the good guys triumph. It is much more than that. It is a way of life. That's why Shimon Peres has survived 90 years, because he gets up every day and thinks about today and imagines tomorrow and focuses on yesterday only insofar as it is relevant. The wonderful Hebrew phrase, tikkun olam, which we normally characterize as to repair the breach, is a good and constant responsibility we all have. But the truth is, in a world of increasing interdependence, we not only have to repair the breach in the fabric of our current community, we have to continue to push our imaginations to expand the definition of that community. The limitations on our minds and our hearts in that work are many. We live in a time when almost all barriers are constantly being torn down, and new ones are constantly being erected. We live in a time when we truly are interdependent. We cannot escape the consequences of what others do, nor can we escape responsibility for things we do that affect others, not simply in our own neighborhood, but around the world. And so there is today, and will be for the foreseeable future, and perhaps for as long as there is life on our planet, a constant struggle to redefine those to whom we feel the obligation of tikkun olam. Who, after all, is in our group, and who lies without it? In an interdependent world, beleaguered by shared economic problems, shared political and other vulnerabilities, the specter of climate change, should we be trying to put everyone in our crowd? The other day I read an interesting quote by the great chronicler of the British Empire, Rudyard Kipling. And I apologize for not bringing it with me, but it went something like this. whoever is in our group is us. Everybody else is them. In a funny way, most of the world's struggles since people first rose up on the East African savannah, families and clans began to form, groups hunted for scarce game, found land to plant crops. You could argue that the whole of human history has been a constant battle to redefine who is us and who is them. And that the imperatives of our ability to destroy each other have imposed on us a heavy responsibility to continually expand the definition of who is us and to shrink that of who is them. Sometimes the most shining examples of what has worked in this endeavor are found in small places. I think it is important to acknowledge, since everything that has been said here about the work that I have tried to do in my life has been positive, that along the way I have made many mistakes. I have tried to calculate what I could do and what I could not. One of the greatest examples of overcoming past bitterness and conflict to create a different sort of unity is represented here by the President and First Lady of Rwanda, Paul and Janet Kagame. It is also one of the greatest examples of my neglect as president. I was so obsessed with how we were going to get into Bosnia and stop the slaughter in Bosnia and prove that we, Americans and Europeans, could stand up for a Muslim minority being killed in a European country. And the people in Rwanda in the genocide were slaughtered so quickly, 10% of the country in 90 days, that we literally never even had a meeting on whether we should do more to stop it at the White House. I say this to make a larger point. Every one of us, each in our own way, will face challenges in our lives, and we will not meet them all. The lesson of Shimon Peres's life is not to give up or give in, but to get up and go on, to keep the process going. Shortly after I left office, first I went to Rwanda in 1998 and publicly apologized for the fact that the United States had not been more active sooner in trying to stop the genocide and offered to help. It's the first time I met President Kagame. Then I went back afterward and was asked to help raise funds to finish their memorial to the genocide and to help deal with some of the healthcare challenges in the country. Today, my foundation is active there and working to help smallholder farmers and to build up their ability to earn more money from adding value to the food dollar. But anyway, in 2001, I saw a stunning example of the work that Paul Kagame had done to change the mindset of Rwandans about who is us and who is them, and how important it is to let go of yesterday and embrace tomorrow. The press going with me, naturally enough, given the nature of the modern communication system, when I went back in 2001, wanted to find people who said, what is President Clinton doing here? Where was he when we needed him? Why is he back? So a reporter for one of our major newspapers was riding with a cab driver in downtown Kigali. And he said, don't you resent Bill Clinton coming here? And the cab driver said, no, I'm glad he's here. And so the reporter said, why? He said, first of all, nobody came to help us, and he's the only one who said he was sorry. Then he said, secondly, he did not make us kill each other. We have to assume some responsibility for that, and responsibility for making a different future. And as our president keeps telling us, we need all the help we can get. And it was a stunning insight about the work you did to first say to your people, no matter what anybody has done to us, no matter what we have done to each other, the first step of building a new tomorrow is to get rid of the things that divide us, including seeing ourselves as victims. We have to claim a future that we make. And the great beauty of the State of Israel from its beginning, that has allowed it to transform itself into what is now commonly referred to as a startup nation, the center of innovation for the whole world, is that it was seen as a safe place for the people of Israel to learn that they need no longer be victims. That the beginning of freedom requires a responsibility. What has all that to do with today? It is nice to receive an award. It is nice for a country to have its monuments. But there are no final victories, none, in Tikkun Olam. There are no final victories. There are no perfect warriors for peace. There are no flawless leaders. Every day, inside every person, in the modern world where we were all crashing into each other and compelled to share the future, the battle begins as the morning breaks. Every one of us, when we wake up in the morning, has inside, in our hearts, our souls, our spirits, a scale. You feel it every morning. On the one side of the scale, there are all of your hopes and dreams and your best impulses. The world you want to make for your family, for your community, for your country, for people everywhere. Then on the other side, there are all those fears and resentments and angers and disappointments. They are weighing too. And every day when we get up, the balance between the bright side of the scale of our lives and the dark side is a little different, isn't it? For all of us, some days we get up full of hope, determined that there is nothing we cannot do, no one we cannot embrace, no problem we cannot overcome. And then some days we get up and we just can't let go of anger and heartbreak. We have to let go. For all of life is a constant struggle to expand the definition of who is us and shrink the definition of who is them. And in an interdependent world, we don't get to stop. We don't get to give up because we mess up. We just have to show up
כי
and
נכשלת,
go
אנחנו
on.
חייבים להתמודד, להגיע, להופיע.
That is what I
ולהמשיך.
ask you
וזה
to
מה
think about.
שאני מבקש מכולכם.
The first time I came to Rwanda,
בפעם הראשונה שהגעתי
I asked to
לרואנדה,
meet, Hillary and I did, with some victims of the genocide.
הילרי ואני רצינו להיפגש עם
The
כמה
most moving person I met
מהקורבנות של
was a lady
רצח
who
העם,
was
ואני פגשתי
resplendent
באישה
in a beautiful bright colored dress and
שהשמלה
said that,
יפהפייה.
I couldn't figure out what happened to her. She seemed to have no visible marks
לא ראיתי שקרה לה משהו,
until she told me that she had been betrayed by her neighbors and she woke in a pool of her own blood to find her husband and 6 children lying dead around her. And she screamed out to God in anger that she had been spared. Then she said to us, I realize I must have been spared for a reason, and it could be nothing so mean as vengeance. So I do what I can to help us begin again. She ran an orphanage where she took in children without regard to their ethnic background and placed them in homes without regard to their ethnic background. Several years later, after Rwanda's remarkable little genocide museum was finished, I received a tour because I helped raise some funds to finish it, from this dazzlingly handsome young man who looked as if he had a master's in business from Harvard University. And he was giving me the tour, patiently expanding how this disaster occurred. And I said, did you lose anyone? He said, yes, I did. I lost my parents and my brother and my sister-in-law. And he said, if you stop at my uncles and aunts and first cousins, 73 people in my family were killed. And I said, isn't this hard for you, taking me through here? He said, oh no, it's therapeutic. Our president tells us we have to face the past and then let it go and live in the future. So I said to this man, you remind me of this lady I met the first time I was here. And I told him the story about the lady and losing her husband and her 6 children. And he smiled. And he said, well, I should. She's my aunt. Why do I tell you this? Between the Israelis and the Palestinians, there are many reasons for continuing distrust. There are many reasons to wish that you didn't have to deal with this. There are many reasons to think that maybe you won't because you're rich and they're poor and you're strong and they don't seem to be. And besides, you got a lot of problems now with all this other stuff going on your borders. But the one thing I know is the lesson that had been driven home. And I could give you 100 examples of this that I have personally seen in tiny Rwanda, was that if you're compelled to share the future, you have to decide what the sharing is going to be. And you have to establish the terms on which this future will be shared. And if the terms favor you too much and someone else too little, then there will always be us and them. There will be no tikkun olam. There will always be, for the public spirit of every place, the scales out of balance too tilted to the dark side. There is no perfect answer to any of this. There is simply the perfect obligation to continue to expand the definition of us and shrink the definition of them. I ask you to think about that. In several of the places that our foundation works on healthcare and agriculture in Africa, the typical greeting as people meet each other walking on pathways goes something like this in English. Hello, good morning, how are you? And the answer is not, I'm fine, how are you? The answer translated into English is,
שוב, התרגום לאנגלית הוא,
I see you.
אני רואה אותך.
Think about that.
תחשבו על זה.
Think about all the nameless
תחשבו על
people
כל אותם אנשים
who go
ללא
about
שם,
their way every day,
שמסתובבים להם כל היום, הולכים
the
לדרכם,
people who serve
אותם
food in
אנשים
nice restaurants in rich
שמגישים
countries,
מזון
the
במסעדות
people in
יוקרתיות,
despised minorities in places where there are
אנשים מתוך המיעוטים,
conflicts,
במקומות
the
סכסוך,
sick people who must beg for a living on teeming streets in burgeoning cities, who are literally never seen.
ואף פעם לא רואים אותם.
So it turns out that I see you is a much better answer to good morning than I'm fine, how are you?
זו תשובה הרבה יותר הולמת למה שלומך מאשר אני בסדר או מה
I'm
שלומך.
honored to be here because I think
כבוד הוא לי להיות כאן מכיוון
President Peres
שהנשיא פרס
always tries to see everyone.
תמיד מנסה לראות את כולם.
I think he has the combination of mind and heart to remind us that much as we might like it to be otherwise, all the people that we sometimes don't see are going to be part of our future. They are going to define it. Their children have their hopes and dreams too, and they have to be able to advance them.
וגם הם רוצים לקדם את האינטרסים האלה.
So I accept this award
אז אני מקווה
not because of all the things in the films, but because I feel like a poor pilgrim
בסרט אלה, מכיוון שאני
on a
מרגישה
constant
כמו
journey
רגל,
to expand the definition of us and shrink the definition of them.
המונח אנחנו ולצמצם את המונח של
A man
האחר.
almost as old as Shimon, the Nobel Prize winning microbiologist E.O. Wilson, wrote a book last year called The Social Conquest of Earth, in which he briefly traces the history of all life on the planet and concludes that the dominant species who have really triumphed in the history of all life are the cooperators, the ants, the termites, the bees, and the people. You should laugh, but the combined weight of ants on Earth exceeds the combined weight of people on Earth. Termites with no brains, as far as we know, make places to live in hot climates that have many, many holes, but they will only go in and out of one. The rest is for air conditioning. Bees find a way to pollinate what is 90% of our food supply. And Wilson says in his book at the end, the humans have the greatest potential because they have consciousness and conscience. But they pose the greatest danger because they know how smart they are, so they're prone to arrogance and to hunker down in ignorance. Mr. President, after 90 years, you have proved that if you spend a lifetime trying to get rid of arrogance and get rid of ignorance, you can get quite a lot done on life's road. And that is what I ask you all to think about. Israel should always be seen in a state of becoming. The region should always be seen in a state of becoming. Somebody else's idiotic, negative, crazy behavior cannot be an excuse for a response by you in kind. Do you have to be strong? Do you have to defend? Yes. But in the end, all of our lives will be judged, and the lives of our children and grandchildren and those to come will be shaped by whether we succeeded in expanding the definition of them and shrinking the definition, expanding the definition of us and shrinking the definition of them. Whether we can walk along a road and encounter people from all over the world with all different faiths and all different kinds of promise and all different kinds of problems, and say honestly, I see you. None of us is perfect. None of us will win all the time. The important thing is to stay on the path, to keep looking, and to keep working. Bless you.